The biggest survey ever on bowel habits in the UK was called the Big Poo Review.
Oh, what on with the name?
Hi, I'm Dr. Federica Amati. I'm the author of Everybody Should Know This, head nutritionist at Zoe, and I teach nutrition to medical students at Imperial College London. The gut microbiome refers to the virtual organ and all of its genes made up by trillions of microbes that call our large intestine or our colon their home. These millions of microbes, also called the microbiota, include viruses, bacteria, fungi, tiny phages, and even parasites, all of which create chemicals that impact every aspect of our health. Think of this like your own personal internal forest, an ecosystem all of its own that continually adapts as the conditions change. The soil is made up of prebiotics, types of fibers and foods which our microbes expertly break down to survive, making helpful or unhelpful byproducts in the process. Each microbe is like a different type of tree, shrub, moss, or flowering plant that lives in the forest, playing its own unique role in the overall ecosystem of the gut. What does it mean to have a healthy gut microbiome? Well, it means that your tiny forest can support your health in the same way big forests can support our health, by cleaning our air, creating a cool and protected ecosystem, and store groundwater. In short, a healthy gut microbiome helps us to improve our digestive health by ensuring we absorb nutrients efficiently from our food and that we go to the loo regularly, expelling undigested food and unwanted toxins from the body.
Fede, how can we tell if our gut biome is out of balance?
So the simplest way we can tell is if we're constipated, or if we're bloated, often bloated, or have diarrhea. That is usually a really good signal that our gut biome is not very happy and that it's not able to do its job properly. And we can measure that actually. So there's a few things. For example, if you eat like a lot of sweet corn, you can time how long it takes to see it from your plate to the bowl, toilet bowl. And like when you look at how long that's taken, it gives you a good indication of how slowly everything's moving or if it's moving at a good pace.
What would be a good pace?
Good pace is anything between sort of 15 to 30 hours. Going to the loo once a day is good. It's a good sign that things are ticking over, and people tend to have a time of day that they go to the loo when their body switches on.
I'm a morning gal.
Yeah, most people are, majority.
Yeah.
So we did the biggest survey ever on bowel habits in the UK. It was called the Big Poo Review.
Oh, what on with
Really
the name?
good.
Very good.
Well, that wasn't me, but
The Big
it was
Poo
good.
Review.
And actually, yeah, we found that the majority of people do go in the morning.
We're getting like TMI now, but I would not want to leave the house without having done my morning poo. I'd feel really weird.
And anyone who suffered with constipation knows it's really distracting. You don't feel good.
You don't.
You feel groggy.
You feel toxic. Like you can
feel
almost
tired.
feel that you've got stuff in there that shouldn't be there.
It's exactly right. It does make you feel like that because that's exactly what's happening. You're storing things that your body actually doesn't need anymore.
I love a good poo. Like there's just nothing better. There's no better feeling.
Yeah,
It's the
feel
best.
great. Walk out of the loo feeling
It's
lighter.
fantastic, Fede.
And every time you
Yes.
poo, you're a bit more human.
What do you mean?
As the poo moves through, it actually, a lot of the poo, about half of our poo is just microbes that they kind of collect on the way down. And so there's, Tim Spector says it a lot. He says, every time you poo, you're a bit more human. So you have a few less bacterial cells, and when you go to loo, become a bit more human.
Oh, I love that. I felt real human this morning, like big time. If our gut biome is out of whack, what might it affect? Because I know it's not just physical symptoms you might get here. This is all tied into how we're cognitively working as well.
Yes, definitely. So the gut microbiome, the research around it has been amazing in the past sort of 10 to 20 years. And we've now discovered specific axes. So you may have heard about the gut-brain axis as one that has had loads of interest, loads of research around it. We actually understand quite well how the two connect. So the enteric nervous system is the nervous system that surrounds our gut. It's why we sometimes call the gut the second brain. And it is really complex and takes messages from the gut to the brain and then from the brain to the gut. And that all happens through the vagus nerve, which is this really big sort of bundle of nerves that travels from the brain all the way through the body, but mostly like 80% of it goes to the gut. And so the gut-brain axis is really well understood, but now we have much more science about the gut-lung axis. So we know that, for example, people who have a gut microbiome that's not really functioning optimally for them are at higher risk of lung infections.
Wow.
And there was a lot of research done around this during the pandemic because you could see that people who had poorer gut microbiome composition had worse outcomes with COVID.
Wow.
Yeah, then the gut-skin axis is really important. So lots of dermatologists now recognize the importance of good diet and good microbiome because it directly relates to things like acne. Psoriasis is another one that has a really strong relationship. So all these kind of inflammatory skin conditions. We also know that it really impacts energy. So when you have a gut microbiome that's slightly suffering, it's not able to produce all the helpful chemicals that it should do for you or that it could do, you actually feel more tired throughout the day as well. And it impacts our metabolism, right? So not only how we digest our food, but how effective our body is at responding to sugar, responding to fats, responding to proteins, that's all impacted by gut microbiome composition. What we have now is clinical trials that show that if you directly impact gut microbiome composition with dietary intervention, you see that the gut microbiome is a mediator for the improvements in mental health. Professor Felice Jacka, she's done a beautiful trial called the SMILES trial. They had a group of patients who had very severe drug-resistant depression. They gave these patients a Mediterranean diet and followed them up. And within 3 months, there was a reduction in depressive symptoms of 30%. And what was really cool about her study, which I love, is that she did a cost analysis of, was it really expensive to provide this diet for these patients? And it wasn't. It was cheaper than their current diet.
Yeah. So the Mediterranean diet, tick. What else could we do to help with our gut biome?
So the Mediterranean diet, when you break it down, has a lot of the ingredients for a healthy gut biome. And that includes having a fiber-led diet. So when you look at the dietary pyramid for the Med diet, it's like plants, all at the base. That's what you start with. Instead of saying, oh, I'm going to have chicken and I'll like boil some broccoli with that. Flip that around. What vegetables are you having? And then maybe you can add a side of chicken if you want, but you don't have to, right? We don't have to have animal protein at every single meal. So removing ourselves from that mentality helps. Just taking a step back and saying, actually, what do I have? Okay, I've got mushrooms, I've got aubergines, maybe I've got some tomatoes, some frozen spinach. What can I do with that first? Including more foods that we know are so beneficial for our health and directly impact our gut microbiome. So these are legumes, so beans, pulses, green peas, things that grow in the soil. They are so good for us and we do not get enough of them at all in this country. So try and make those part of your daily diet. Whole grains is another forgotten sector of like our food aisles. And often people go, yeah, whole grains, yeah, I eat those. I'm like, oh, what great, what's your favorite? And they're like, I don't know, whole grain bread?
Brown bread?
Yeah, and it's like go to the really unsexy aisles in the supermarket and find the pearl barley, find the spelt, find the buckwheat. They're the easiest to cook, right? There's some other really cool ones. Quinoa, yes, is a whole grain, but like arguably not that tasty, right? So let's
put a bit of stock in there, fine.
Yeah.
I don't mind it, I'm down with it.
Good for you, that's great. I prefer like buckwheat and barley for me are just the winners. Add those to your diet. So instead of rice, maybe swap it for like a buckwheat when you can, right? And you can batch cook these, you can keep them in the fridge, you can add them to anything. Also, we've demonized whole fruits quite a lot in this country. So people don't have enough whole fruits in their diet. And when I say whole fruits, I really mean not blended, not juiced, like the whole fruit.
Eating an apple,
eating a banana, eating blueberries.
Yeah.
And you know, here, frozen fruits play a huge role because they're cheaper. They don't go off. I mean, I love a raspberry, but they really go fluffy in about 5 minutes.
Like literally half a day.
Yeah, so you either like have them straight away.
Yeah.
So once we start adding these things in, we start thinking plants first. We've got our whole grains, we've got our pulses, we've got our whole fruits, and the last piece of the puzzle, if you're not allergic, is nuts and seeds.
Yeah.
Nuts and seeds are wonderful for us. They add texture, they add flavor, and they are so rich in fiber and loads of nutrients, loads of really healthy fats. So adding those like every day as well.
I'm obsessed with nuts.
Are you? I love them too. Just mix nuts. I put them in a Kilner jar, leave them on the side in the kitchen. And then if you're kind of in that mood where I don't know what to have, it's like, boom.
A cashew makes me really happy.
Cashew. Yeah.
I love a cashew.
Yeah, and mix seeds, right? Add them on a soup.
Yeah.
Add texture. Add them on your yogurt. Great. Add them on a salad. You can add them everywhere. And they really will help to support your health and support your gut biome because our gut biome really likes diversity of fibers. And actually, if you have an appendix, your appendix acts as sort of like your logbook.
So I thought the appendix did nothing.
No, it's not true. The appendix is like the USB, like, you know, your backup, backup drive for your gut. So it stores like all the microbes that like to live in your gut. And when you do have antibiotics or an infection or something goes wrong, it will kick into action and help to repopulate the gut biome.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's actually, you know, it's pretty resilient. It will come back to life, but we need to support that regrowth to be helpful as opposed to unhelpful.
So what else is knocking it off course? What should we...
Alcohol.
Alcohol, okay. So we've got to avoid certain things if we want to keep it in balance, or limit, reduce.
Or limit, reduce, yeah. So certainly alcohol does disrupt gut microbiome healthiness, let's say. Also eating lots of foods that contain chemicals that we didn't really evolve to eat. So these are typically things that we call ultra-processed foods, emulsifiers, artificial sweeteners. We thought that these were inert because we don't absorb them into our bloodstream. But of course now we know they don't get absorbed into our bloodstream, but they do go down to the gut.
Yeah.
And the gut biome does interact with them. Sometimes breaks them down. Sometimes it actually inhibits the growth of healthy bacteria. So trying to limit foods that contain all these additives. And we are specifically talking about, you know, artificial emulsifiers, artificial sweeteners. And unfortunately, they are in pretty much every single ultra-processed food.
Yeah.
So it really ties into this dietary quality idea. If you have a diet that's really high in high quality foods, which means whole foods, it does not mean they have to be super expensive, then you're likely to not be eating these chemicals that do interact badly with the gut biome.
God, this is also interesting. I've also got some really lovely questions from our Happy Place community that I'd love to put to you. This is a really great question, and I think many of the Happy Place followers will be happy if you answer it. What's the link between menopause and microbiome?
Oh, I love this question. So the Zoe menopause study is the biggest study on the menopause that's happened, right? And one of the really cool findings that we got from this data is that when we looked at women across the life course, so we had premenopausal, perimenopausal, postmenopausal women, and we age matched them. So the reason we did that was to make sure that the changes we were seeing were due to menopause and not due to age, which is really important because often people are like, oh, you're just getting older. It's like, actually, no. Women going through the menopause had these really noticeable changes in their gut microbiome composition, so that a postmenopausal woman's gut biome was more similar to a man's gut biome than to a premenopausal woman.
Wow.
Yeah, so real change, like all change, right?
Wow.
There's a few factors, but one of them is that some of our gut microbes are sensitive to estrogen.
Right.
So when our estrogen decreases, they don't have anything to like sort of signal to them to stay alive and keep making the enzyme that they make. And so then this whole population of microbes starts to decrease. And as we talked about earlier, like other things move into that gap in the ecosystem. So that's one of the factors. Also, women going through menopause, their metabolism changes, their responses change. So they tend to crave foods that are higher in sugar, for example, to help plug the tiredness they're feeling for the metabolic change. And that also has an impact on the microbiome. So it's this really complex picture. But we were able to show that there is actually a mediating effect, again, of the microbiome changes on the metabolic changes we saw.
Wow.
So the microbiome has a part to play in that.
Oh my God. The power of food, it's not to be underestimated, and it's been utterly fascinating learning about the gut and, you know, the ways that we should be eating and the power of fibre. It's just fascinating stuff. Dr. Fede, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I loved being here.
Loved it, loved it, loved it. If you love that too, I'm really, really happy. Do watch our other episodes of What Is How To, and don't forget to hit subscribe, and then you'll never miss another episode again. Thank you so much for watching.